Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the 2026 race for Maine Senate. This is going to shape out to be a really fascinating race in my opinion, and we have some news out in the race today. Graham Platner, who is running as an oyster farmer in the state of Michigan, is leading in the most recent poll against primary challenger Governor Janet Mills. Now, this is fascinating because Governor Mills has won across the state multiple times in Maine. So the ability for her to campaign and win a race is much more likely than someone like Graham Platner, who is a newcomer to politics as a whole and running a race like this. So, with this said, we're going to talk specifically about these polls and everything today, but I wanted to go ahead and make note of it early on in the video that Graham Platner is performing very well in this race thus far, a lot better than I think a lot of us originally thought he might, especially after Janet Mills announced that she would in fact run for this seat. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and kind of look at where we're standing on this Democratic primary as far as between Platner and Janet Mills. The University of New Hampshire has a new Democratic primary poll out and a general election poll for both hypothetical matchups between Susan Collins and Janet Mills, and then Susan Collins and Graham Platner. We'll talk about that in just a moment, but let's begin with the Democratic primary poll, which has Graham Platner up by 38 points across the state. So, of course, this is from the University of New Hampshire, and it's quite fascinating to me that Platner is up by this sort of margin across the state. Now, you can see there's been other polls done across this race, some having Mills leading, but a lot having Platner leading. Not quite like the margin of this poll, though, specifically from the University of New Hampshire, which has Platner leading by 38 points. Now, this is important to note because Janet Mills is the current governor of the state. If anyone has the name recognition and ability to go out and win a Democratic primary across the state, you'd think it would be Janet Mills. But she seems to be having a bit of trouble facing Graham Platner, a newcomer who's endorsed by people like Bernie Sanders, who is really taking this political race by storm and running a race that's going to be quite interesting. Now, to say the least, this race was one that, Senate Majority Leader, or Senate Minority Leader, my apologies, Chuck Schumer, pretty much has poised that Janet Mills, in not so many words, should be the nominee for the Democrats in this race. He essentially convinced her to run, from what I understand, and he wanted someone like Janet Mills to run. He's been trying to recruit people. This is a similar strategy of that of maybe like 2006 really was the last time we've seen something quite like this, where we're seeing a lot of former candidates, whether governors or senators, run. So, for example, North Carolina, where we think, or at least I do, think that Roy Cooper is poised to win that race in the general election. He's a former governor of the state. Janet Mills, current governor of Maine. We're also looking at people like Sherrod Brown, who's the former senator of Ohio, trying to get him to run again. So the people in these inner circles, the people that are running here, are really strong candidates. I didn't even mention Mary Peltola from Alaska, who won across the state when she was on the ballot for the House seat. So importantly, the Democratic Party has tried to to run candidates who they believe can win across states. Roy Cooper, who's won in North Carolina multiple times. Janet Mills, who's won in Maine multiple times. Sherrod Brown, before losing in 2024, had won the state of Ohio multiple times before. Mary Peltola, able to win across Alaska a couple times, and then in 2024, still making it very competitive. People who are going to run strong campaigns. That's what they've tried to recruit for these races. But it just goes to show this race specifically in Maine is going to shape out interesting. It's very interesting, and maybe not the way that people originally thought it might go. Graham Platner, in fact, might be the Democratic nominee for this race in Maine. Now, it's important when we look at the general election, too, which I already mentioned that we were going to talk about. And when we look at the same University of New Hampshire poll, I'm pretty sure, they were all conducted in this February 12th to February 16th time frame, so mid-February. The poll from the University of New Hampshire against Mills and Collins has Mills only leading by 1 point. Compared to that of Platner versus Collins, Platner's leading by 11 points. Now, this is fundamentally important because we can talk about the lead that Graham Platner seems to have over Janet Mills, not only in primary, but also in the ability to perhaps defeat Susan Collins, a task that Democrats have been trying to complete for a multitude of years now. So this race is really, really, really fascinating. I know I say that about every single race that we talk about on this channel, and I specifically say it because every single race that we've talked about, for the most part, is a competitive race that is going to shape the balance of power heading into 2026. So, with that said, let's take a look back at the 2020 general election polling from the state of Maine, Susan Collins versus Sarah Gideon. When we look at this polling, you can see, similarly to that of Graham Platner, Sarah Gideon was leading by a large margin. If we go to the beginning of 2020, the first poll, let's see, in the year, looks like February 10th through the 13th, had Sarah Gideon up by 1 point. By the end of the race, she was averaging about 3 to 4 points, and then Real Clear Politics about 6.5. So, importantly, Sarah Gideon was not able to win this race. In fact, she lost it by that of a pretty heavy margin, 8.6%, while polling suggested that Sarah Gideon was going to be the one who won this race. Ultimately, that didn't happen. Susan Collins remains in the Senate, and she's up for re-election in 2026. Now, we look at Janet Mills, who's important to this conversation because she's trailing in the Democratic primary, according to polling at least. Mills has won across the state of Maine in 2022 by 13.2%. If we go back to 2018, she won across the state by 7.7%. Goes to show she's able to win in Maine. So it's interesting that Maine voters aren't so adamant to vote for her in the Democratic primary, someone who perhaps might have a really good shot at winning this race. Polling suggests she has a less shot than Graham Platner, though. Polling suggests that people would rather vote not only for Graham Platner in the primary, but also in the general election. And this is really important when we talk about the shape of politics. Janet Mills, if she was elected senator in 2026, she would be the oldest freshman senator. That's important. It just goes to show that perhaps people in American politics, specifically Maine politics for that matter, in this race, are ready to say goodbye to the old guard and welcome in a new age of leaders. So, if that's the fact, if Graham Platner ends up winning this primary, is he going to be able to defeat Susan Collins? Now, of course, there's already been baggage that's come out about Graham Platner throughout this primary season. And that is going to be fascinating, too, because of the way that this race could shape out. Susan Collins can use stuff like that against him. But the real question is if the environment is heavy in the Democrats' favor, and then Graham Platner has this amazing ability to appeal to young voters who are ready to turn the page on old politicians, respectfully. Can he win? That's the question across the state of Maine. My answer? I'm not sure, but the polling seems to think that Graham Platner has a really good shot at winning this race. If we look back at other polls too in the general election, we can see that Collins is leading Mills and Platner in some polling, and then Platner was leading by a point against Collins in a workbench strategy poll. Collins was leading against Mills in that same one. So it seems overall that perhaps Graham Platner, according to polling at least, is the better candidate. And that's not just according to this University of New Hampshire poll. Of course, that's part of it. But also according to a multitude of other polls, it seems that perhaps he has the better shot at winning. So with that said, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think that Graham Platner or Janet Mills is going to win this primary? And ultimately, who do you think ends up winning this election? As you know, in my Senate forecast, if you've watched it, you know I have this race rated in the Democratic column. So importantly, I would say I keep it there at this point. I think that either candidate, Janet Mills or Graham Platner, stands a chance at winning this race, although polling may have you believe that Graham Platner is the candidate to win. So again, let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always. I appreciate you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.